Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to look at two of the biggest forces in our lives, money and love, but through a completely different lens. We're diving into a spiritual philosophy from the work of Mark Macy that argues they're not really what we think they are. In fact, they might just be imitations of a much deeper, more fundamental cosmic energy.
So, where does an idea like that even start? Well, it begins with this really mysterious message, the literal writing on the wall. The story goes that these words were traced by a ghostly hand during a huge feast for a king in ancient Babylon. In Aramaic, it all translates to something like count, weigh, divide. Now, the source material we're exploring today suggests a much more direct, modern take on that ancient warning. And honestly, it's the perfect place to start because, thousands of years later, our relationship with wealth and earthly stuff is just as complicated, maybe even more so.
Okay, so let's really dig into that ancient warning. It points to this timeless human thing, this fixation on material wealth. And it's this exact fixation that the whole philosophy we're talking about really tries to unpack.
So, if chasing earthly spoils is some kind of trap, what's the alternative? Well, according to this perspective, the universe actually runs on a completely different and way more real kind of currency.
At the heart of it all is this concept called life energy. And it's not described as some vague, abstract idea. No, it's pitched as the actual, pure force that makes everything in existence tick. It's this constant, free-flowing energy from a universal source that we're all connected to.
And then, you've got money. In this view, money is seen as a totally man-made imitation. It's like a substitute we came up with, a kind of artificial life energy, just to help us get by in our social systems here on Earth.
And what's so fascinating here is how these two energies are almost perfect opposites. I mean, look at this. Life energy, simple to distribute. It just flows freely to everything. But its function is incredibly complex. It creates vitality, love, all of it. Money is the complete reverse. Its distribution is insanely complicated, all tangled up in economies and politics, but its function is really simple. It just assigns a value to things.
And this contrast gets us to a really crucial point from the source material. Pure life energy? It only inspires these noble motivations, things like love and truth. But money, because it's just an earthly tool, well, it can fuel both our best intentions and what the author calls our savage motivations, things like fear, deception, and obsession.
Okay, so this whole framework of real versus imitation, it's not just about money. It gets applied to another massive force we all deal with every single day: love.
And this brings up a really fascinating question, right? If pure love, just like life energy, comes from some universal source, how in the world does it get twisted into the complicated, dramatic, and sometimes really painful passions we all experience?
Well, the philosophy presented here suggests that our own biology is basically a filter. So as this pure cosmic love reaches us, it gets fundamentally changed by our brains, our hormones, our DNA, and it gets bent into something much more, earthly, and often a lot more volatile.
So according to this view, that pure love is still there, deep down inside us, but it gets surrounded and often totally hidden by these other powerful earthly drives. And yup, that includes the one we so often mistake for love itself, the sex drive. So, how are you supposed to really get the difference between the real cosmic stuff and its earthly imitation? Well, the source material suggests we need to look beyond our world to a place where earthly rules like biology just don't apply anymore, the afterlife. Now, this description of what's called the Level 3 paradise, which was reportedly received through spirit communication tech, it presents a really startling idea. It suggests that earthly pleasures, like sex, can actually continue after we die, but they're totally disconnected from their biological purpose. So think about what that really means. The crucial point here is that in this state of being, our pleasures are completely separated from the earthly drivers of survival and reproduction. Sex isn't for making babies, eating isn't for staying alive. They just become pure experiences, totally untangled from all the stress and drama and consequences of life on Earth. As it's described here, ecstasy without the agony. So this entire cosmic framework, it all brings us right back to our lives, right here and now. And it presents us with a pretty fundamental choice about where we decide to put our focus.
So the key takeaway here isn't to reject the material world or just abandon money and relationships. Not at all. It's really about shifting our perspective. It's about seeing the temporary nature of our earthly dramas and consciously choosing to prioritize that real, nourishing life energy over its artificial and, let's face it, often stressful imitations. And all of this leaves us with one final thought to chew on. As we go about our lives with all the very real pressures around money and the powerful passions of love, it's really worth asking ourselves, what is the true energy that we are investing our lives in?